Every time I ask one of my clients if they've ever had a manic episode before, they never know what that means. And I don't blame them because even I didn't know what manic or mania meant before I became a nurse practitioner. So I'm making this video to explain the signs of mania in common terms that everyone can understand. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up guys? It's me, ThePsychNPDavidC. So before we start, I just want to make sure everyone knows this video is meant for educational purposes only and is not meant to be medical advice. So what exactly is mania? A lot of people think it's just you're talking a lot or you're laughing a lot or you have a lot of energy. While those things are true, it's certainly a lot more than that. So in school, they actually taught us an acronym or a mnemonic to use to remember the signs of mania. And that mnemonic is dig fast. It's a 7-letter mnemonic that makes it easy to remember the signs of mania, especially when it comes to bipolar disorder. So starting with the first letter D, D stands for distractibility. Someone who's manic is very easily distractible. Like they can be talking to one person and the second they hear something else, like another person talking or an animal barking, they'll literally turn their attention like straight to that noise, just like. It's very difficult to maintain that conversation with someone who's in a manic state because they're so easily distractible. They can't hold a conversation with one person for longer than a couple seconds before getting distracted and thinking about something else. And I stands for indiscretion. This can pertain to many things. Usually it's like financial indiscretion or even sexual indiscretion. An example of financial indiscretion would be like someone going to Vegas and gambling away $5,000 thinking they'll just make it back another time when they only have like $200 in their bank account. They obviously can't afford it, but they do it anyway. Or like someone starting a business, investing like $10,000 into a startup business with no actual plan. And then regarding sexual indiscretion, a person who's in a manic state will most likely stop at nothing to get what they want. That means if a manic person is focused on having intercourse, they will stop at nothing and find anyone or anything to have intercourse with. At the psych hospital that I work at, I actually had a 28-year-old female patient have intercourse with a 56-year-old male patient. I guess somehow when staff weren't looking, somehow the male patient rushed into the female patient's room and they just got it on real quick before staff caught him a couple minutes later. Yeah, that obviously shouldn't have happened, but unsurprisingly, they were both diagnosed with bipolar disorder and were both in manic states. Moving on to G, which stands for grandiosity. This basically means you have like a grandiose belief of yourself or like inflated self-esteem. A person who's in a manic state can honestly believe that they're like God's greatest creation on earth, or they're like mankind's savior of humanity or something like that. I had a patient say to me once that he had an IQ of over 400 and that he was always 100 steps ahead of everyone else. Now this guy was like 60 years old in a wheelchair, so it might be true, but well, most likely it's probably not true. Yeah, sometimes those grandiose beliefs can just end up being like delusions. And next up is F, which stands for flight of ideas. So this basically means when a manic person is talking, whatever they think about, they'll loosely think about an idea that's closely related to that, and then they'll switch to that idea. And then when they start thinking about that new idea, they'll start thinking of another idea that's closely related to that one. And it keeps going in like a vicious cycle. So let's say someone who's manic is talking to you about cars. And then they say something like, oh yeah, I have a 2002 red Ford Mustang. And by saying Mustang, it triggers the thought of horses in their mind. So then they'll end up talking to you about horses. They're like, oh yeah, I have a horse back at my farm. And then by saying the word farm, that idea leads them to think about the other animals they have in the farm. So they end up saying, oh yeah, I have a pig in my farm too. And then by saying the word pig, they start thinking about bacon. So they're like, oh, bacon, I love bacon. I actually had bacon for breakfast yesterday. So somehow your conversation with this person started with cars and ended up with bacon. And that's because that manic person was going through their flight of ideas. And the next letter A stands for activity increase. Basically, this means that person just has like a lot of energy to do a lot more things. That can apply to many different things. For example, it can apply to like physical activity. Maybe someone who's in a manic state will exercise more than they usually would. It could also mean like increased goal-directed activity. For example, let's say somebody wanted to start their own YouTube channel for a long time, but they've just been putting off making videos. All of a sudden, they enter a manic state and then they make like 10 videos in the same night. Another example of activity increase would be just like the inability to sit still. Like that manic person will feel so restless that they just feel like they have to keep moving. They can't sit down no matter what. So it's not just high energy, it's like excessive energy. And next up is S, which stands for sleep deficit. This one's pretty self-explanatory. A person who's in a manic state will feel like they don't need sleep to function. Sometimes they can sleep for like 2 to 3 hours per night, and then they wake up feeling fully rested, ready to go with excessive energy for the next day. In some manic episodes, some people can actually go without sleep for like 2 to 3 days straight and still function like they got a regular night's sleep the day before. Sleep deficit is actually one of the first signs that you notice in someone who's about to enter a manic state or who's in a manic state. For me personally, when I work in my hospital, if I see that one of my patients hasn't slept in like 1, 2, or 3 days straight, my mind automatically assumes that they're probably bipolar. Obviously, I need more info than just their sleep, but it is one of the first warning signs for sure. And last but not least, T stands for talkativeness. A person who is manic will talk your effing ear off. They will literally talk without taking any pauses, and they don't let you get a word in. They'll just keep going and going and going. They do not care if you're not interested in the conversation. They don't care if you're trying to exit the conversation respectfully. They just keep going. A lot of times a manic person isn't in a state of mind to be like reasoned with. So there's no point in trying to like explain anything to them because they're just going to cut you off. They're just going to keep talking. So it's probably little to no point in trying to rationalize with them. The term we use for over talking is called hyperverbal. And that's also one of the first signs of mania, especially in bipolar disorder. So that was the acronym DIG FAST. Let's go over it quickly one more time. D stands for distractibility. I stands for indiscretion. G stands for grandiosity. F stands for flight of ideas. A stands for activity increase. S stands for sleep deficit. And T stands for talkativeness. Okay, so now that you know what the signs of mania are, have you ever been in a manic episode? Let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram if you want to follow me over there. I also do telehealth medication management for adults living in California. If you're interested in booking a session with me, there's links down below. And with that, your mental health is leveled up. You're welcome.